Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rhonda here at this podcast at TTK Massive Feed from His Basket. Oh, I sing a song for another day for us. I'm waiting for the sun to break through. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. It is. It's not warm like we would like it because we want to go to the pool, but still, it is 19. So if you double that and add 32, pretty much you got your temperature. So if you're going to Fahrenheit, I used to have a car, and when I would go over to the States, I could switch over to miles per hour. I usually kept it in miles per hour. I miss that old car. I miss it. It had a 454 block in it. It was like, it rocked. I mean, you stepped on that gas pedal and whoosh, it went. I do miss that. I do miss it. It was my first car I had. It was a great car. I'll show you a picture of it if I can find it. But yeah, so it was the time. Also, there was switching over from miles per hour to kilometers. And when it had first done that, I was a young teenager. And my boyfriend and I and my mom were in the car. And my mom said she wanted to drive. So we said, sure. And she's driving down, when you go around a bend, and it had switched over to kilometers, and she thought it was miles per hour, and she steps on it, and I'm going, oh no, because the car started going, so we have to be careful, right? Yeah, so she is used to her miles per hour, right? And so it was quite a change. And now people seem to only know, right, kilometers and not miles per hour. But when you're set in one way, it takes time to change over, to unlearn what you know, to go back to something new. And of course, people with kilometers say, no, it's much easier to go by kilometers than it is miles per hour. Well, I have to say, I really like my miles per hour, and I really like my gallons, and stuff like that. But, yeah, it's basically unlearning what you know. Yeah. So how are you this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be? Yeah. I want to show you a picture. I was in my first aid and courses, and I had just finished the fundamentals of teaching it. And I want to have a look at this. It's interesting because I can't share everything with you because you have to go and take the courses to learn it. But I want to help you with something because in first aid training to teach it, it's actually in our everyday skills as well, and as if we're studying the Bible. Yeah. So if you were to look at this, what do you see first? Well, you either see, you think of your ABCs in first aid, but you might see 12, 13, 14. Right? It's how you view it, right? So you start looking at the letters or the numbers, but it's the perception that depends on what you start reading, right? So it's like reading the Bible. It's not that you're wrong. It's just that, well, if it's not aligned, you're wrong. But in the Bible, it's how we view it. I like it, as time has gone by, I like it as spiritual. So I like looking at it as piece to the house, as in digging down the spiritual stories about not reading the surface, but what it all means spiritually. So I look at it, and then the more each day as you look in the Word and you study it, the deeper you get into the treasures of it. Okay? But if you're not, you're not. But if you do, you get more and more treasures, which is really nice. Same with the people in the Bible. That's like onlookers. when you see a fall out on the street or an accident, there was this lady a few months back. I was driving down. Actually, I was driving down Oxford. Anyways, I was heading out to work. And before I got to Wonderland, but I was going down and it was really busy. I mean, it was very busy. Everybody was rushing off off to work and whatnot. And I saw a lady on the side of the road and by the big driveway, and she was lying sideways on the ground with her walker on this side of her. And when I took a look at her, there was another man, and he was looking over at her like this. But I was pulling in. I didn't even think about pulling in everything, but what I had seen. So I called 911, and I told them approximately where she was, because it was really busy, and and gave them as much information, what she looked like, what she was wearing, what was beside her, who was with her, and the whereabouts. But let's say I ignored it and I watched it, and I was an onlooker and nobody did anything. Well, we're looking at some traits of maybe some psychopathy, right? This happens a lot when you see, this happened to my dad. My dad, onlookers were seeing him on the floor, and they took him as being drunk or something, and it wasn't that at all. He was hemorrhaging on the inside, coming out, and some lady, I don't know who she was, but I heard that some lady called 911. She called a respondent. So she recognized it and she called 911. But everyone else, they just left him there. Right? That's kind of like when we see homelessness. And in homelessness, we take as well, either they don't have a place, or what is going through our minds. I don't know what goes through your minds. But a lot of people are on drugs, and but not all. There's actually some people I know that are homeless. Just change that station. Are homeless, that they go over to the Tim Hortons and they clean for free. They go clean up because they need something to do. And they need work. Okay, so they have told me they go and clean the surrounding areas. They pick up all the garbage for them, do whatever. And it shows that they've shown that they want to work. And there's no reason why someone can't give them work. Okay. The excuses are no fixed address, they're home. We find so many excuses. But what if that person was, someone stole their money and put them out on the street? And nobody's done anything about it, and the law ignored it. Okay. Another man told me that happened to him. And what he does, he's an evangelist, and he was sleeping by the river, and he told me the story, his life story. One day he sat down and shared his stories to me. So I had invited him in to eat at a restaurant over on Commissioners Road in London, and he sat down, and that was the time my sister was diagnosed with cancer. And so my sister couldn't sit beside us. She was over another part. She had to sit over here with my mom because she couldn't pick up anything. For some reason, yet it was really strange. We're in a restaurant, you can pick up anything. But so he sat down, he shared his testimony to me, this happened to him. And it was out of greed. It was out of greed. And now he, once in a while I'd see him and I'd get a coffee and hand it to him, and he's still out there evangelizing, and I was just, it's not right that you don't have a home. And he has another buddy that they would sleep over by the river together, and he was an evangelist. And he never forced. He just says, I'm not, just people get greedy. And he says they took us home. He lived in a beautiful home with his wife. She died, and he had money, and it was taken. So we sat down, and he was hungry. He was hungry, and we just bought extra, and he took it back to the river and whatnot, and he was chatting with me for that. But how? You don't know people's stories. There was another girl that she needed her panties changed, so she got some clean underwear and pants, and she just stripped down. You don't care when you're itchy or smelly or whatever, and you need a clean pair of underwear on and clean pants, you're going to strip it down and put some new ones on, So before we set judgment in, you got to think about stuff like that, because when you're at home, how do you feel when you don't have your underwear changed, right? Or if you feel itchy and you need cleaning, right? It's no different. It's no different. So when I look at this, we have different views. We have different views in what we see. And also same with the Samaritan man. The parable of the Good Samaritan. Well, that story there, if I look at it spiritually, being filled with his spirit, and I'm thinking about how the Lord fills us with his spirit, and he changes our heart, and he is the Good Samaritan, and he transformation of the mind. And with the Word of God, equals Jesus, he was filled with it. And so in this story, on the occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. And teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is it written in the law? He replied, How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. Love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Well, in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. So robbers, anyone who steals, is filled with what? So if you are, unless you're oppressed and forced, but if you are deliberately stealing, you are filled with evil spirits, right? You're filled with evil. You're filled with sin. You are transgressing the law. You are filled with, they call the devil, right? Called Luciferian. So they stripped him of his clothes and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, and when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by there. So but a Samaritan, as he traveled, he came when the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. And he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. So the oil, the Holy Spirit, and wine, the Word of God. And then so that's Jesus. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. And look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. So which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. As we are to do. It's called being a giver with love. There's a few little questions, or a few sample questions. When I'm in the Word, I also use these sample questions, but you never think of it as being in first aid. But it is first aid. We're sick, and we need fixing. So, can we explain the concept of our own words? So, assessing, right? And then, what is our initial reaction of the scenario of this story to gain clarification? So, if we assessed it, and what did we learn from it? What was clear about this story? What is the initial reaction to this scenario? How did it make you feel inside? To apply that knowledge, how did the concept apply to the whole situation? How does what we talk about in the morning apply to the situation? If we wake up in the morning, you can use any question you want. How did we apply it in our everyday walk, right? To connect and organize the information from this and what we took from it. How do we think of the issue that is viewed by others that maybe you would disagree with? A different perspective, right? A prompting of a different perspective. Well, does the principle always apply or under certain conditions? Well, to refine a statement or an idea. But which part of the text led you to that conclusion of what you thought about this? What led, if we read this story, to the conclusion of this? What needs to be done? And what part of the text, led you to that? So what do you think about the idea presented by another person, by their ideas? Because we have different views. And what are the assumptions that these two arguments share to us? If someone has a view and you have a view, it's not that you're wrong. As I said, we have a different view, so it depends how deep we go into it. And what are the assumptions that you two can share? And can you think of an example of a situation from your own personal experience, as I shared to you, to provide an example? And that's who the Lord is. He's a giver, and He's a lover. Now, being a giver and a lover. It's like if I was an onlooker and nobody was taking care of anything. If there was no 911 call, there was no one there to respond, no action taken, and I just videoed it and I said, come on, let's go, let's get a bite to eat, and just ignored the whole situation. Well, what are you going to do about it? What would you think of me? But unfortunately, there is. It shows me when I studied with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and behaviors and body language that I am telling people I probably have psychopathy traits, and I just don't care. If I was videoing it. And I was sharing, look what happened, and I didn't report it. What does that tell me about me, who I am? How would you view me as a person? There is religious troubles of persecution with communist rule in some parts of the world in 1945. Well, my mom was born in 1943. I actually have a genealogy. I have to find it because, well, I'm hoping someone will find it. I have a genealogy of my family back going to Micmacs. We're Micmacs from out east. And, Native, indigenous. And however, we go back in our genealogy and we see, but we're all related. But it's just that, just if I go back in my genealogy, some people think I'm Asian, some people think I'm indigenous, some people think whatever. So it's different views, but doesn't make them bad. Doesn't make them bad. Some people think I have some Negro in me, whatnot. But we look at the tests and times for Christians in other countries. There was in Hungary and Poland, in Eastern Germany and China. And during the post-war years, governments had suppressed the work of the churches and encouraged anti-religion activities. And Christians have endured persecution and suffered martyrdom back then. The struggle still continues. Another way you can look at martyrdom, if you look at it spiritually, because that's how I look at it, as that they were gone from old to new. Old to new. Old wineskin to new wineskin. But in these countries, the post-war years, this is what happened. The governments have suppressed the work of the churches and encouraged any religious activities. Christians had endured persecution, and that's what happens. So the struggle continues. But honestly, it's not you as a person, because I think it's great that you had your heart changed, okay? So that's great. It isn't, people aren't mad about that. People aren't mad about that. They're mad because they don't want people to know the truth about Jesus. And it's because Jesus is the perfect one. Why? Honestly, it says out throughout the word that there was pride. It was pride. And pride destroys. Right? Between the wars, they were seriously menaced in Germany, and Hitler was determined to bring the churches under domination of the state and National Socialism, and with its nationalist militaristic spirit became increasingly anti-Christians. If you go to page 199 in The Church in Our Own Time, in this book, it's called The March of the Cross, and Weidenfeld and Nicholson Cowie. And so we all have our different views. Okay. But each one of our children, I have 5 gorgeous daughters. Actually, my daughter, a couple weeks ago, I asked her for some photos. I finally got to see her. I finally seen her. Like, I haven't seen her in forever. And she's gorgeous. She showed me some model pictures. I mean, but she never ever pursued it. They took lots of pictures of her. Her friend used to when she was younger, and you know, it depends how you're looking at your pictures. But again, I just trying to. But if that's my baby, and that's my youngest, and so I have 5 beautiful daughters, absolutely gorgeous. I'm very grateful and thankful, and you probably believe that your children are gorgeous too. It's what's inside us. This man come up to me, like I was saying there, I says, your baby, oh my goodness, I want to hold your baby. I love babies. And he says, no, you don't. And I went, pardon me? He says, no, the baby has a devil in him. Like that. He says, we all do, right? So, but that's what he was getting at. So we need a heart change. But, yeah, it was interesting. You get to meet people like he was a Christian man. But the point is that he just happened to walk up to me when I was in there at the walk-in clinic when I was having my foot checked because of the fractures. And it was like the third time I was in there for the same thing. So people have views. His view was, hey, my baby is beautiful. Yeah, I have a beautiful baby, but the devil's inside. That heart's got to be changed when he gets older. So we all have different views, right? That's like, when you are brought up in a group of people or parents, each child has its own identity. Okay, even if they kind of look like you or look like you. But you as a parent would know their behaviors, right? But if they were trained up and they all started behaving the same way, what would that tell you? That would mean that someone has trained them up to doppelgang their behaviors, right? So you would know, okay, I know where that came from, right? Because it wouldn't be of who you would think it is. It's the same with that's how you know we're so good at labeling. We don't want to do that. I don't like labels. I don't like labels because labels can cause a lot of problems. Okay, and it's not good to throw labels on people. Okay, it's not good. You could say things like, that's odd, or that seems different, or can we talk about it? Do you mind? Or, I'm finding, you might be able to say, I'm finding something odd, or something, whatever it may be, if it's your children or whomever, but it's not healthy to throw labels on people. Okay. It's a different view of somebody else, right? But it's very dangerous to throw labels on people. And what Jesus does is he changes that label. He changes that label because he changes the heart and he changes the mind. Yeah. And as you're in the truth, it gives you transformation. It gives renewing of the minds, right? But here, see, I showed you a picture. Here. Between the wars of what was happening in Germany, Poland. So Hitler comes along. You all heard of Hitler. Hitler was not a nice person. Hitler was not a nice person. Somebody keeps messaging, hey baby, are you there? I don't, for one thing, I don't know who this person is. They're pretending to be Elon. Talking about that before I go on, some woman was coerced. She was played around with. And she thought it was Elon Musk, and she thought that he wanted to be with her. And she found him very, very attractive. And this person was able to manipulate her, and she left her husband, and she was looking for Elon. It was on the news. It's sad, So I know I just got one, hello, baby. So unless you can show me who you are, right? And if it was Elon, he could call me to identify themselves. So I want to be careful with labels. You might think because someone studies a lot that they're just because they have placed their whole life into studies because they enjoy studying. And automatically it's like, oh yeah, well that person studies all the time, so they're autistic. Before you throw a label on, it's best just to mind yourself. Hitler, he is considered a psychopath. He was considered. He was determined to bring the churches under the domination of the state and National Socialism, and with its nationalist and militarist spirit, became increasingly anti-Christian. Opposition to the Nazis centered in the Confession Church, led by Pastor Martin Niemöller, a former submarine officer, and Cardinal Thalberg. The Roman Catholic Archbishop of Munich was a courageous and outspoken critic of the regime. The outbreak of war in 1939 added to the trials in the German Christians. And so here, clergymen and laymen who opposed the government or protested against the cruelties inflicted upon the Jews were arrested and sent to concentration camps. I watched these movies and they had some live footage. I don't know how they got it, but oh my gosh. It makes your stomach really sick. I also watched a movie last night, and all I couldn't get my children off my mind because it was about this child that was kidnapped. Remember back in the milk cartons that had a picture of your child if they were missing? Now they use it just to get money, so you don't see that. Well, what happened was the one couple, their daughter got manipulated into a cult. And then there was this other family who had a little girl. So Hannah, who got manipulated into a cult, she ended up with hepatitis and died. But she was coerced into kidnapping this little girl. So this little girl shows up at Hannah's parents' house, and they end up taking her in and raising her from 3-year-old up. And then the other family was completely devastated, and they had 2 more children. They were still devastated. And then what happened is the little girl grew up, and she started to have, she was having dreams and stuff, so she got curious, wanted to know why it took her longer to get her driver's license, why couldn't she see her birth certificate, etc. And it was because of that. So finally came to a conclusion it wasn't that they stole her, it was they didn't know where she came from. They raised her. She was beautiful. She was a spitting image of her own daughter. Identical, almost. But she did the right thing, and they did get a hold, find the family, because the young girl, 13-year-old girl, found her picture. And anyways, through this investigation, because she went and spent some time with her true parents, and they were lovely. They were beautiful parents. But the thing is, she missed her family, her other parents that weren't of blood but raised her. She ended up going back to them because the blood parents believed it was the right thing, even though it hurt really bad. And at the end, they both connect hands. So this way you know that they're both going to stay in contact to be with her at the same time. The girl was more in her comfort space, raising up by this other family. So it was really hard for her first to engage with the new family. And, so it was different upbringing. One liked having burgers, which she always wished she could have, and the other family always ate healthy or foods. It was more, they were more of the elite upper class, but they were both wonderful, right? So, just devastating inside you when you see, oh my gosh, because, even when your child would disappear for 30 seconds and you're in panic zone, right? So, yeah, you got to be careful with labels and what's going on. That's why when people talk about labels on their family members. I truly don't take it to heart, because they don't know the person's heart. Now, if we look at this is what happened, and Hitler, he was really mean. There was no empathy. He was a sadist. He was no heart. It was dark. And he killed how many Jews? And I saw this on TV, and I was going, where'd they get these live footages? Because it was a nightmare. Operation Resist, friends of mine made that movie. Very good movie. I got to watch it before it became live out to everyone. I got to see it on their TV. And their belief as Jewish, like where mine was Christianity, but we're treated all the same with respect. There was different views. But I'm telling you, it was great. I sat down there. I was at the edge of my seat watching this, Operation Resist. So I was able to take some photos, lots of photos, while I was there, and met more people in the business and joined the independent acting. Here, so it's a good movie. If you want to watch that, it's good. It's really good. It's to do with this, with the Nazis. So here, the outbreak of war in 1939 added to the trials of German Christians. So clergymen and laymen who opposed the government or protested against the cruelties inflicted upon the Jews were arrested and sent to concentration camps. And devastated by war and divided into two states since 1945, and the post-war Germany had presented the churches with many difficulties. And here they had not only survived, but shown remarkable vigor and energy under such leaders as Otto Dibelius, Bishop of Berlin and presiding Bishop of Evangelical Church in Germany. Even in the countries where there has been no religious persecution, the churches have had to face many grave difficulties. So much of the way of life and so many of the trends of thought in the modern world are completely secular, at least indifferent to the claims of religion. So this, when I watched Operation Resist, I was, before it even went to everybody else, and I got to be in their home, welcome me with complete love. And I was watching that, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was, you might know one of the men. You might have seen me with him, Burl Stokes. He was one of the actors in the movie. And so decline. And when you watch that, it's like it's an eye opener. Now I started watching them on TV. And sometimes I just like I have to turn it off because it hurts. It's like watching slaves being walked on and eaten and beaten and sex and trafficking and everything else. And in attendance to this, decline in church membership and in attendance of public worship, what happened is ignorance of Christian teaching and neglect of Christian morals have been featured of contraries which have been Christian for centuries. So the present age has sometimes been spoken of the post-Christian era. And when Christian civilization is declining and many people are living on the spiritual tradition of the past, so the churches, therefore, in these countries are in many ways like Christian outposts, and they're near pagan lands. And because of this, there has been continual effort to win back people to the faith, and the most recent being the campaigns of Billy Graham, or the American evangelist, or who meeting in the United States and Europe have attracted surprisingly large crowds. You have to be very careful, because when you're influenced by people, you don't. And I can say to you, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I beforehand, as my mom chose me to be Catholic. I didn't have that choice. She made it. Because that's what her family was. And so I wasn't sealed into that. So that's, I went to Catholic churches and Catholic schools and on with my life. But through my struggles, I wanted to know who Jesus was. I mean, I still miss that one black Bible my first black Bible. And so I had my heart changed and transformation. And through the word, it changes who we are, but also when it changes our inside, it changes the way we view people without judgment, or view life. Our love is expanding even bigger than I can ever imagine. And it also, you do get angry. You have a righteous anger. And you become bolder. You get more knowledge. And you learn about alignment and love and the direction. And you just have a lot of fun. And that's what it's about. It's not about, because as myself, I've got to experience all kinds of things. I got to experience, speaking, being a speaker on the radio, or being an actor, or learning to sing, and learning all the different geology and within the history and geography and psychology and philosophy, and there's a lot of things in philosophy I don't like, and in math and in English and communication and writing. I love to write, and dancing. Oh my goodness, the art of dancing. So you get to experience new all the time. It just helps you grow in your view of looking at it. So I look at ballroom dancing as a love story from the Bible. That's how I look at it. So, we have our own views. You might view it differently. Well, I hope this helped you out today. And you have a beautiful day. I'm Rhonda again at this podcast at TTK Mass. And you take good care of yourself, and God bless.